Robert McCall, Denzel Washington, is up early getting prepared and going to his work at Domestic Bazaar. He is regarded and well-liked among his co-workers. He sits to have lunch with his companion Ralphie, Johnny Scortis. Ralphie takes a nibble of his sandwich and McCall listens a crunch. There's chips in his sandwich. McCall reminds Ralphie he's assumed to be dropping weight for his test to gotten to be a security guard. Most evenings, McCall goes to a coffee shop where he takes a book. He is right now perusing The Ancient Man and the Ocean. A youthful young lady in the put, Chloe Beauty Moritz, inquires McCall if the man in the book has caught the angle. He says not, however. The young lady wraps up her pie and goes to salute a cab. McCall's associates inquire him what he utilized to do some time recently working with them. He jokes that he was a pip with Gladys Knight, doing a small move for them. McCall goes back to the burger joint that night and runs into the same young lady. She takes note he's perusing an unused book. A limo pulls up over from the burger joint. She at that point gets a call from her pimp, Slavi, David Moynier. He tells her she has a client, which is the man in the limo. The young lady doesn't need to, since this man is a pig. The car entry opens to uncover an corpulent man holding up for the young lady. Reluctantly, she goes exterior and joins him. The following night, McCall finds the young lady in the burger joint. She has a bruise on her confront. He gives her a donut that he got from work. She sits with him at his table and presents herself as Terry, in spite of the fact that her genuine title is Alina. She hands McCall a CD that she recorded of herself singing. McCall takes off with her, and they take a walk. Some time recently, a car pulls up to them. It is Slavi and his driver Tevi, Alex Vidoff. Slavi gets out and slaps Alina. McCall takes a step forward until he sees that Tevi has a weapon. Slavi strolls over to McCall and hands him a card for his trade to inquire for other girls. McCall visits the coffee shop once more another night and learns from the chief that Alina is in the ICU after being beaten gravely. McCall goes there and sees another prostitute, Mandy, Haley Bennett, by Alina's side. Her confront is indeed more bruised and messed up. Mandy strolls by McCall. Crying, she gets a container of coffee but floods the glass. McCall comforts her and inquires around Alina. They ride the lift, and Mandy tells him that Slavi hit Alina, and she hit him back and was made in case of. Mandy says that Slavi too tossed battery corrosive in a girl's confront to make her an illustration as well. He has undermined other young ladies before. McCall looks at the card that Slavi gave him. He goes to a zone over a eatery where Slavi and his men are assembly. McCall enters with an envelope containing $9,800 for Alina's opportunity. To begin with, the goons snicker at McCall. In spite of the fact that Slavi says that the cash would be great to keep Alina for 1 month. McCall takes the cash back and begins to walk out. He nearly clears out, but at that point chooses to remain and bolt the entryway. After carefully watching the men and anything weapons they may be holding, he sets the clock on his observe. One of the men points his weapon at McCall, but he gets the man's arm and causes him to shoot Slavi in the throat. He at that point hits a shot glass into that man's eye. He wounds the third man, and at that point gets a corkscrew and over cuts Tevi until he sticks it beneath his chin and wraps him off. McCall goes to Slavi's side and observes him gradually die. Following the murders, a Russian mobster named Teddy, Martin Sakis, arrives to Boston to look for out the executioner. He groups up with a bunch of degenerate cops to pick up leads. At work, McCall takes note Ralphie isn't in. He's told that Ralphie stopped. McCall visits a eatery that Ralphie's mother works at. Ralphie is making the difference there after a fire broke out, as far as anyone knows, by accident. Teddy is taken by one of the slanted cops, straight to the point aces, David Harbour, to the work environment of a criminal named John Looney, Sean Fitzgibbon, to proceed his look for the executioner. John insuperable Teddy and all Russians in common. In reaction, Teddy hits John with an ashtray, whereas straight to the point murders John's goons. Teddy proceeds to beat John's confrontations until the man goes unconscious. The other two messy cops, Remar, Mike O'Day, and Pedersen, James Wilcox, are eating at Ralphie's mother's eatery. They blackmail her for a few cash and claim that there will be another mishap if the cash isn't on time once more. McCall finds them exterior the eatery and says he'd like to report a wrongdoing. They brush him off until he calls one of them actually. McCall appears them a video he took of them, blackmailing a comfort store receptionist with proof of their confession to beginning the fire at the eatery. McCall tells them they can either grant the cash back or the video will hit the news stations. The cops hold him at gunpoint, but McCall rapidly beats them both. They comply and afterward return the cash to Ralphie's mother. A lawbreaker comes to Domestic Bazaar and holds the cashier Jenny, Anastasia Mouses, at gunpoint until she hands him the cash in the enroll. McCall calmly comes over and gives him the cash. The hoodlum too requests Jenny's ring, which was her mother's. She mournfully hands it to him. McCall watches a few subtle elements of the man, like his tattoos and his cap. He doesn't make a move since children enter the store with their mother. McCall instead takes after the man exterior and gets a C at the plates on his car. The cops illuminate them that this was portion of a string of burglaries from the same man. McCall at that point goes to get a heavy hammer off a rack. The following day, Jenny finds her ring in the enroll. McCall at that point returns the pound to the rack after wiping it clean. Teddy gets a few data with respect to McCall, most of which shows up clean with no sign that he has any inclusion with Slavi's passing. He and straight to the point, along with another lowlife, stake out whereas one of their folks tries to capture McCall at the coffee shop. McCall knows the man is up to no great, and he inquires him if they're holding up for anybody else. The man takes out a weapon and begins to walk over to him. A truck pulls up by the coffee shop, darkening the sea for Teddy and company. McCall hits the man in the stomach with his book, and at that point slaughters him by pummeling his head down on the table and breaking his neck. He at that point slaughters the lights by staying a cut in an outlet. He strolls out of the burger joint and snaps photographs of Teddy and his men in their car. The hoodlums take after McCall domestic. He bubbles a few nectar to tend a wound supported from the shooter. He oversees to slip out some time recently. Teddy and his goons arrive. From another room, McCall observes them from cameras covered up around his flat. Teddy knows he is watching. McCall goes to the domestic of his companions Brian and Susan Plummer, Charge Pullman, and Melissa Leo. McCall knows Susan can accumulate a few data with respect to Teddy and the individuals he works for, whereas she is out getting what he inquired for. Brian tells McCall that he was accepted to have been dead, but Susan knew the truth. When she returns, she tells McCall that the men he murdered were portion of the Russian mafia driven by Vladimir Pushkin, Vladimir Kulich. Teddy, who is truly named Nikolai, is the man Pushkin sends when something needs to be done. Remar and Pedersen were on Pushkin's finance, but were found dead a few days prior with their gonads blown off and pushed down their throats. Susan cautions McCall that these men won't halt until he and everybody he cares almost is dead. McCall finds straight to the point and traps him in his car with a hose to harm him with carbon monoxide until he tells him to offer assistance him. Straight to the point yields and guides McCall to a distribution center where the Russians keep their cash. McCall oversees to get all the hoodlums there to yield, and he has them tied up in a room with all the cash for the cops to discover, and at that point he liberates the laborers. The police arrive to discover the hoodlums and cash, and to capture straight to the point. McCall at that point goes to Frank's security store box and gets his cash, Visa, and a USB containing more data with respect to Pushkin and his dealings. He finds his oil tankers and blows them all up. Teddy and his men surpass Domestic Bazaar and hold McCall's companions, counting Ralphie and Jenny, prisoner unless he goes to stand up to them. The scalawags track his cell phone to anticipate his entry. When he doesn't show up to appear, they nearly execute one of McCall's colleagues until music begins playing over the intercom. The criminals walk out and are relentlessly murdered by McCall as he stealthily moves around the put. He hangs one with thorned wire and wounds another one through the neck. And at that point murders one by blowing him up in a room with hydrogen in a microwave. Ralphie goes to offer assistance McCall until he gets shot in the leg. McCall makes a difference him elude until he's cleared out with Teddy after the blast sets off the sprinklers. McCall gets a nail weapon and shoots Teddy with it more than once until he gets him in the throat, murdering him. 3 days afterward, McCall corners Pushkin in his domestic in Moscow as Pushkin is taking a shower. McCall turns the lights on and off more than once and runs the sink water. Pushkin goes by the sink and finds McCall has vanished. He calls for his watches, not realizing that McCall cut the wires and cleared out them uncovered. The water hits the wires, and Pushkin is shocked. The other watches have as of now been killed. McCall returns to Boston and is drawn nearer by Alina, no longer bruised up. She tells him she's gotten a genuine work and has begun to do a few perusing. She much obliged McCall for what he did, and she kisses him on the cheek sometime recently. They offered each other farewell. The final scene highlights McCall back at the coffee shop on his tablet. He gets a message inquiring for offer assistance. He basically answers, yes,